Alright, in this video you are going to learn about the law of sines. So the law of sines is a formula that allows you to find the missing measures of a triangle, so it doesn't have to be a right triangle, when you have either. So if you have two angle measures and a side measure opposite, that's when you can use law of sines, or if you know two side measurements and a non-included angle. Okay, so it's the angle that's not in between the two sides. What the law of sines is. So if I have a triangle here, if I have a big letter A, that means my little a is opposite of that angle. Same thing, I've got angle B over here, which means little b is opposite. Angle C in green, little c is opposite, and the little mean the side lengths. So the formula is the sine of angle A over the length of A is going to be equal or proportional to the sine of B over little b, which is proportional to the sine of C over little c. Okay, so if you know two angles and their opposite sides, we can set up a proportion and cross multiply. Okay, so these are all going to be equal to each other. So let's look at some examples. So I need to find the measure of angle B. Okay, I cannot use trig because I do not have a right triangle. So if I am looking for B, I do have little b. I've got the opposite side. Same thing, I have little c, and I have its angle. So I'm going to first set up the sine of B over B is going to equal the sine of C over little c, and I'm going to substitute in. I do not know the sine of B, so I'm just going to leave that, we could say sine of x, or you could leave it as a b, over 13 is going to equal the sine of my c, which is 115 over 29. Okay, so I have a proportion I can set up and solve now. So I'm going to cross multiply, and so I would get sine of x times 29 is going to equal sine of 115 times 13. I'm not going to type that in the calculator yet. I need to get x by itself, so I need to divide by 29. Okay, and therefore my sine of x is going to equal all of that multiplied and divided together. Okay, what's going to come in nice is your fraction button, which mine is not going to work in this case. So I'm going to do parentheses. But you would type sine of 115 times it by 13 and then divide it by 29. So let's open up this calculator. First thing, I am dealing with degrees, so I'm going to make sure my mode is in degrees. Okay, so now sine of 115 and times that by 13. I get 11, and I'm going to divide that by 29. And so you should have gotten 0.406. Okay, but now I'm going to leave that up there because I've not found x yet. Okay, I need to get rid of this sign by doing the inverse sign on this side and on this side. So finally, if I type in the inverse sign of what I just got, that's going to give me my final answer. Okay, so if I type in my inverse sign, and if you hit this button down here that says answer in blue, I want that answer in there. Go back. Second, negative. It'll put in this answer without a rounding error. Okay, or you could type in the whole thing. But basically, you should get 23.97. So we're going to say that's about 24 degrees. So angle B is approximately 24 degrees. Okay, so that is how you use the law of sines to find a missing side. So again, you set up a proportion, you multiply and then divide. And then if you're looking for an angle measurement, you're going to have to do the inverse sign of that decimal to find your answer. Okay? All right, let's look at an example where we are finding a side length. So in this problem, I am given two angles. And let's see, I want to look for BC. So let's call that X. So I'm given A and little a. I'm given C and little c, so I can use my law of sines. So I'm going to use sine of A over A equals sine of C over C. So I'm going to say sine of 39 over, I don't know, is going to equal sine of 105 over 23. First off, I'm going to cross multiply. And I would have x times the sine of 105 is going to equal 23 times the sine of 39. Again, order doesn't really matter in that case, but I am going to divide by sine of 105 on both sides. So I would get x equals, and I would get my final answer. So again, fraction button in the calculator is going to come in handy here. So we are going to do 23 times the sine of 39. Okay, and then we are going to divide it by the sine of 105. So my final answer should be 14.98. So we're going to leave that in 0.98. And then let me look back to see what our units are. We're in kilometers. Okay, so finding a side is a little less work because you do not have to do the inverse of sine or anything. Okay, so that is law of sines. So remember, you need an angle in the side opposite and an angle in the side opposite to do law of sines. So why don't you try this last one on your own? Press pause and then we will go over the answer. Final answer for this problem was 38.9 degrees, or about 39 degrees. So what I did was I had big A and little a, big C and little c. So I set up my proportion, I substituted in, and I solved. So I had to multiply these two numbers and then divide by 38. And I got 0.628119 or whatever. Take the inverse of that, and you should get this answer. Okay, so that's how you solve a triangle using law of sines. Okay, thanks for watching. You can practice.